There's a distinction between legal direct action and illegal direct action. I still remember, I think, when I first came to Edinburgh, how the trade union of the city called a general strike against the city council because it was thinking of putting up council house rents. And all manufacturing in the city stopped work, and the council, and there was 5,000 people in the city quadrangle saying, don't put up the council house rents, and the council didn't. Now, that's direct action. That can be very effective. And I've certainly been involved in pickets and sit-ins and things like that, which technically were illegal, but in the early 70s, we forced Edinburgh University to get rid of £10 million of investments in South Africa by occupying university premises. Although technically that was illegal, no one was ever prosecuted for that, and we're actually lauded by the press and the Church of Scotland and a whole load of establishment organisations for bearing witness against racism, etc. So yeah, I mean, direct action can work and can be effective, and sometimes it's necessary when politicians and establishments like the ones that ran the University of Edinburgh drag their heels and don't see the light.
Hand up over there.
The question about direct action to stop evictions was particularly prompted by the bedroom tax, which is coming in April, which, as most folk will know, is a cut in housing benefit for folk who've got so-called extra bedrooms. And this is particularly affecting folk with disabilities, but also a lot of other people in social housing. And it's going to be made a lot worse by all the cuts and benefits that are going along with this. So in our workshop, we were discussing that what we should be saying is that it's disgusting that anybody should be evicted through no fault of their own just because their benefits have been cut, and that we should be saying we won't let people be evicted in these circumstances, that like in the days of the poll tax, we'll be at people's doors chasing away the sheriff officers and the police and any other council lackeys that might be there. So I think, we should be thinking about that now and organising it. And I don't think we can put any faith in politicians whatsoever, because all of the parties are getting into power to run a system that's based on money and profit. A successful economy, in their terms, is one that makes profit. And that's completely in contradiction to people's needs in the widest sense. So I think we should be building up community and workplace power from the bottom, resisting all these attacks and trying to create a much better world where, as has been said, we share things, and what matters is human need, and money is just something in a museum. Thanks.
Another hand in the same row, is there? Is there another hand up in the same row? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely the stage we're at now is that direct action is the only way that we can bring the attention that's needed. A year ago we went down to march in London, and we happened to be outside Fortnum and Mason's when the uncut protesters realised that they were in a shop that they couldn't afford to buy anything in. It was just by the way that they couldn't, that Fortnum and Mason's couldn't pay their taxes, and the riot squad lined up outside. But round the back of Fortnum and Mason's, the customers were still sitting in there drinking champagne and having their fine lunch. I think we have to take it to where the problems are. And I think this is exactly what this conference has been about, is that we realise the problems here, we're united in our agreement that there's a problem, and it goes right to the heart of our society. We know what the problem is, and that political parties are taking an awful long time to catch up with what the feeling is. I think we've mentioned the banks, we've mentioned the problems with certain politicians, we won't get sectarian, but we know what needs to be done, and I think it's this kind of conference that can begin to lead that in the right direction. So
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's a hand up at the front, and then I'm going to collect some quick responses around the panel to all of this.
Groups are trying to stay together, even though the funding has been cut drastically, as we will still fight tooth and nail against councils and government. We are not standing alone on this. We need plenty to join our groups.
Okay, thank you for that. Just a quick sentence or so from each of you around the panel. Fiona, can where is the limit to direct action? Where is the limit to what's acceptable?
I don't know what's That's acceptable, but I can't sit down in anything cold because I don't want to sit in the concrete. Apart from that, happy to do the direct action.
Same question for you. Where's the limit?
Well, there is a limit. I mean, I support direct action. It's all that's ever achieved much in the way of social and political change. There was a kind of meme going around in the American elections, I think, in the Democratic camp, which ran something like this: Rosa sat so that Martin Luther King could walk, so Obama could run, so our children can fly. And the idea is that the thing that has actually really motivated social movements in the past has not been organised formal political activity. It has been direct action, so I'm a great supporter of it. But I'm also very, very conscious that we cannot be so sceptical about mainstream politics. I mean, our democracy in this country is very, very poor. It doesn't really function very well, but we mustn't disengage from it. Because if you disengage from it and continue to trash democratic institutions, even if you don't like who's in power there, the people who can emerge on the outside, some of those are not the kind of people we'd like as bedfellows. So we really have to work, as well as, you know, digging in. Imagine if the direct action, there was an American activist, Saul Alinsky, one of his best actions was in the Rochester, a kind of segregated place in America. He got 100 black people into a restaurant, fed them for an hour on baked beans, got them to go and sit down in front of the white people in their fancy suits. It's the first time they'd ever been in the symphony orchestra in Rochester. The next hour and a half, the hall just fills with farts. And it was and he used to say that if you've got lots and lots of people, make sure they can be seen, so you march. If you haven't got so many people, put them in a dark room and make a lot of noise. And if you've only got very, very few people, make a huge stink, was his kind of guidelines.
I would quite like that metaphor to stop here, but let's not take it too much further. Cami, I think we'll let you off on this one, since we did kick off on this with you. Duncan, can you pick up on all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think, what we sum this all up by saying is that for working people, all of our rights have been found through direct action, one way or another. If you think the right to vote, especially the women's right to vote, last century, where would it have been if we left it to the people in Parliament to decide on their own whether women should have the vote or not? We'd probably still be here and they wouldn't have it. So, direct action is really, really significant, I think important. I don't think that you ignore the parliamentary institutions. We put demands on politicians, whatever their party. We demand, for example, that the Labour Party, with its link to the trade unions, acts in a way that supports working people in trade unions. For example, we would demand that they would, if they were in power, get rid of the anti-trade union laws that Thatcher and others have put in place. That's the kind of demand that we would have. We wouldn't ignore that. We wouldn't ignore that. So, but that doesn't mean that direct action doesn't have its place, and it's very, very significant. I think that UK Uncut have done a valuable service in Britain by saying, look, these massive firms dodge their taxes at the same time as the rest of us are facing massive cuts in our services, having to work longer. We talked about the pensions age. That's being pushed further and further up in terms of the time when you can retire. These companies are dodging their taxes. They're not paying their way. Organisations like UK Uncut have promoted the idea and put the spotlight on them in a ways that couldn't have happened through Parliament. So direct action is very, very important. I think